The first contact. The crystalline spires of Nova Primaris pierced the perpetually crimson skies, their gleaming surfaces reflecting the dying light of twin suns. Commander Thera stood at the observation deck of the High Command, her silver combat suit catching the last rays of dusk. Her violet eyes narrowed as she studied the holographic projection floating before her, a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. Earth, she murmured, the word foreign on her tongue. After centuries of interstellar conquest, the Novarian Empire had finally turned its attention to this isolated world. Intelligence suggested it was a primitive planet, its inhabitants still struggling with basic space travel. Perfect for their next expansion. High General Myra's voice cut through her thoughts. The Council has chosen you for this mission, Commander. Your record is impeccable, and your tactical analyses have never failed us. The older warrior's scarred face betrayed no emotion as she continued, lead the reconnaissance team. Assess their defenses, analyze their weaknesses, and prepare the way for our invasion force. Thera bowed deeply, her platinum hair falling forward. I am honored, High General. The glory of Nova Primaris will spread further across the stars. Within hours, Thera stood in the hangar bay, inspecting her crew. 5 of Nova Primaris's finest warriors, each chosen for their specialized skills. Lieutenant Rhine, her second-in-command, approached with a datapad. Final systems check complete, Commander. The Shadowhawk is ready for launch. The stealth vessel lived up to its name, sleek, dark, and virtually undetectable to primitive scanning systems. As her crew boarded, Thera took one last look at her homeworld. The mission was straightforward: observe, analyze, and report. No contact with the natives, no interference. Simple. She couldn't have known how wrong she was. The journey to Earth took 3 standard weeks, even with their advanced quantum drive. Thera spent the time studying everything they knew about the target planet. The data was frustratingly incomplete, mostly long-range scans and intercepted communications. Their military technology is laughably primitive, Rhine commented during one briefing. Projectile weapons, crude aircraft, basic digital systems. They haven't even achieved unified planetary governance. Primitive doesn't mean harmless, Thera cautioned. Underestimating an opponent is the first step to defeat. The words were from her earliest training days, but they had served her well. As they entered Earth's solar system, the crew grew tense with anticipation. Their stealth systems easily evaded the primitive satellites and scanning arrays. Thera ordered them into high orbit, beginning their surveillance mission. What they found was puzzling. Commander, you need to see this, called Vela, their cultural specialist. The view screen showed various scenes from Earth's information networks. Humans fighting wars yet sending aid to their enemies afterward. Competing fiercely in something called sports while embracing their opponents post-match. Creating art that served no practical purpose yet moved millions to tears. They're contradictory, Thera mused. Capable of great violence yet also great compassion. Divided yet united. Weak yet. She paused, searching for the right word, resilient. Their observations continued for days, building a complex picture of humanity. Then everything changed. A solar flare, far more powerful than their predictions suggested possible, struck the Shadowhawk. Their supposedly superior technology proved inadequate against nature's fury. Systems failed cascade style, and Thera watched in horror as their ship plummeted toward the planet's surface. Reroute all power to emergency landing systems, she ordered, her training taking over. Vela, find us a remote crash site. Rhine, purge all sensitive data. The Shadowhawk screamed through Earth's atmosphere, its outer hull glowing white-hot. They were going to crash, but Thera was determined they would survive. As the ground rushed up to meet them, she had one final thought: this was not how first contact was supposed to go. The impact was devastating. When Thera regained consciousness, she found their ship had carved a deep furrow in what appeared to be a forest clearing. Emergency lights cast an eerie red glow through the smoke-filled cabin. "Report," she called out, pulling herself from her command chair. One by one, her crew responded. Miraculously, all had survived, though not without injuries. The ship, however, was another matter. Their quantum drive was completely destroyed, communication systems were dead, and their stealth capabilities were offline. They were stranded on Earth, their mission in shambles, and it was only a matter of time before humans discovered them. As Thera helped tend to her crew's wounds, she heard something that made her blood freeze, the sound of approaching vehicles. First contact was about to happen, whether they were ready or not. Unexpected allies. Through the smoke of their crashed ship, Thera heard the vehicles come to a stop. Her enhanced vision picked out 3 primitive ground transports, what humans called trucks, through the trees. She motioned her crew into defensive positions, their weapons powered but set to stun. They couldn't risk casualties, not when they were so vulnerable. "Contact imminent," WronG whispered, her tactical display showing multiple human heat signatures approaching. 5, no, 6 individuals. The humans emerged from the tree, leaned cautiously. Leading them was a tall, dark-skinned man whose bearing marked him as their leader. Unlike the others, who carried primitive projectile weapons, he was unarmed. He wore some kind of protective gear, a firefighter, Thera realized, recalling their cultural briefings. "Hello," he called out, his deep voice carrying clearly. "We're here to help. I'm Marcus Rivers, Millbrook Fire Department Chief. We saw your crash and..." He stopped abruptly as Thera stepped into view, her silver combat suit gleaming in the evening light. To his credit, he didn't flee at the sight of her clearly alien appearance. Instead, he slowly raised his hands in a non-threatening gesture. "Well," he said, a slight smile touching his lips, "this is definitely not what I expected when I got the call about a plane crash." "Maintain your position," Thera commanded, her universal translator converting her words to English. "Any hostile action will be met with force." Marcus nodded slowly, motioning his team to stay back. "No hostility here. But your vehicle is on fire, you may have injured crew members, and this whole area will be swarming with authorities within hours. If you want to maintain secrecy, you'll need our help." Thera's mind raced. Their mission protocols strictly forbade interaction with natives, but those same protocols assumed they'd have a functioning ship. She looked at her crew, WronG nursing a broken arm, Vela barely conscious from a head wound, their ship beyond any hope of quick repair. "Why would you help us?" she demanded, buying time to think. Marcus's expression softened. "Because you need it. That's what we do here, help people in trouble, no matter who they are." He paused, then added with a slight grin, "Even if they're not exactly people as we usually define them." Before Thera could respond, a secondary explosion rocked the Shadowhawk. "Commander," called their engineer, Kira, "the power core is destabilizing. If it goes critical..." She didn't need to finish. A power core explosion would level everything within a kilometer, and the radiation would be impossible to hide. They were out of options. "Very well," Thera said to Marcus, lowering her weapon. "We accept your assistance. But understand this, if you betray us, you'll vaporize us all with your advanced alien technology?" Marcus suggested, still smiling. "Let's skip the threats and focus on getting your people somewhere safe. I've got a place, my grandfather's old farm, about 20 minutes from here. Remote, private, plenty of room to hide your ship until we figure something out." Over the next few hours, Thera watched in growing amazement as Marcus and his team worked with incredible efficiency. They used their primitive equipment with skill and creativity she hadn't expected, helping stabilize the power core and rig up a way to transport the Shadowhawk without attracting attention. More surprising was their discretion. When official channels began asking questions, Marcus and his team spun a convincing story about a small private aircraft crash, with the wreckage already removed by insurance investigators. They even created false documentation to support the story. How did you manage that? Thera asked as they drove toward the farm, her crew safely distributed among the vehicles. Marcus shrugged. Small town. We look out for each other, and sometimes that means knowing how to keep things quiet. Plus, he glanced at her with those warm brown eyes that seemed to see right through her warrior facade. I figured first contact should be handled delicately. Wouldn't want Earth to panic just yet. You're very calm about all this, she observed. Finding out you're not alone in the universe. He laughed, a rich, genuine sound that stirred something unexpected in Thera's chest. Oh, I'm freaking out inside. But panic doesn't help in a crisis. My job is to keep people safe and handle emergencies. This is just a very unusual emergency. The farm turned out to be perfect, an old but solid house, a massive barn that could easily hide their ship, and no neighbors for kilometers. As they worked to secure the Shadowhawk, Thera found herself repeatedly surprised by Marcus and his team's ingenuity. They might not have advanced technology, but they made up for it with creativity and determination. Your civilization, she said later that night, as they sat in the farmhouse planning their next steps, it's not what we expected. Let me guess, Marcus replied, passing her a cup of something hot and bitter he called coffee. You thought we were primitive? Weak? Thera nodded, embarrassed by her earlier assumptions. We were wrong. Your technology may be less advanced, but your adaptability, your willingness to help even those who might be enemies, there's strength in that. Different kinds of strength, Marcus agreed. Speaking of which, we should talk about why you're really here. A ship like yours, with your kind of technology, this wasn't just a random visit, was it? Thera met his gaze, seeing the intelligence behind his casual demeanor. She had a choice to make, maintain the secrecy her mission demanded, or trust this human who had already proven himself more worthy of respect than she'd imagined possible. The decision would change everything. Hidden strengths. Dawn broke over the farm as Thera paced the length of the barn, her mind churning with the decision she'd made. She had told Marcus everything, about Nova Primaris, the planned invasion, their mission. His reaction wasn't what she had expected. Instead of fear or anger, he had listened thoughtfully, asking precise, intelligent questions that revealed a sharp tactical mind behind his easygoing exterior. Now, as morning light filtered through the barn's weathered boards, they faced the consequences of their shared knowledge. Your wounded are stable, Marcus said, entering the barn with fresh supplies. Dr. Rivera, my team's medic, says your physiology is fascinating. Your healing rate is remarkable. He paused, studying the Shadowhawk's damaged hull. But we need to talk about the bigger picture. Rhine emerged from the shadows, her arm now properly set and healing. Commander, speaking with these humans was a tactical error. We should eliminate them and maintain mission security. That would be unwise, Marcus replied calmly, surprising them both with his lack of fear. You're not the only ones who can gather intelligence. Those primitive satellites you avoided? They still caught your entry into our atmosphere. The military knows something's up, they just don't know what yet. Thera's eyes narrowed. How do you know this? Marcus smiled, pulling out what humans called a smartphone. Because before I was a firefighter, I served in military intelligence. Still have contacts who owe me favors. Right now, 3 different agencies are investigating unusual atmospheric readings from 2 days ago. You've got maybe 48 hours before they find this place. The revelation shifted everything. Thera had assumed they were dealing with simple local emergency responders. Instead, Marcus had been quietly managing a complex security situation while helping them. Why tell us this? Thera asked. You could have let your military find us. Because I've spent the last day watching how you treat your crew, how you handle a crisis. You're soldiers, yes, but you're not monsters. And I'm betting you've learned enough about us to know an invasion would be a mistake. Before Thera could respond, Vela burst into the barn, her usual calm shattered. Commander. We're receiving a transmission from the invasion fleet. They've accelerated their timeline. They'll be here in 3 days. The news hit like a physical blow. 3 days. Not the weeks they'd expected. Thera saw Marcus's expression harden, not with fear, but with determination. Then we have work to do, he said. Your ship's communications might be down, but we're not helpless. Dr. Rivera isn't just a medic, she's a communications expert. And Deputy Chen on my team? Former NASA engineer. We've got resources you haven't seen yet. As if to prove his point, more vehicles began arriving at the farm, people Marcus had quietly contacted. A quantum physicist, a cybersecurity expert, a retired military strategist. Each had been told only what they needed to know, each trusted Marcus enough to come without asking too many questions. Thera watched in amazement as these humans began working with her crew, combining their different knowledge bases. The physicist helped Kira understand why their power core had failed in Earth's magnetic field. The NASA engineer suggested modifications to their hull design that would actually improve its performance. Your people, Thera said to Marcus as they observed the collaboration, they adapt so quickly, learn so eagerly. On Nova Primaris, we're taught that our way is the only way. Questioning is discouraged. But this is humanity at its best, Marcus finished. Put us in a crisis, and we'll either solve it or die trying. Usually solve it, though. We're stubborn that way. Throughout the day, more of Marcus's trusted contacts arrived, each bringing different skills and perspectives. They set up a command center in the farmhouse, analyzing the invasion fleet's likely approach vectors, developing countermeasures using Earth's primitive technology in ways Thera's people had never considered. But it was during a shared meal, something Marcus insisted on despite the crisis, that Thera truly began to understand Earth's greatest strength. Around the table sat humans and Novarians, sharing food and ideas, building on each other's suggestions. There was no hierarchy, no protocol, just pure collaborative innovation. Your society, she said to Marcus as they stepped outside for a moment of quiet, it's chaos by our standards. Different nations, cultures, ideas all competing and cooperating at once. We thought it was weakness, but it's not, is it? Marcus leaned against the porch railing, looking up at the stars. Diversity isn't chaos, it's strength. Every different perspective brings new solutions. We argue, we compete, we sometimes fight, but we also create and innovate because of those differences, not despite them. An alert from Rhine interrupted them, another transmission from the invasion fleet. Thera felt her heart sink as she decoded it. The fleet had adjusted their plans again. They would arrive tomorrow. As she looked at Marcus, saw the quiet strength in his eyes, Thera knew she had a final choice to make. Continue with her mission, or stand with these remarkable humans who had shown her a different kind of power. The fate of two worlds hung on her decision. The coming storm. The farmhouse command center hummed with activity as dawn approached. Screens displayed global military movements, satellite data, and the ever-shrinking countdown to the invasion fleet's arrival. Thera stood at the center of it all, watching humans and her crew working together with an urgency that transcended their differences. The fleet will emerge from hyperspace here, she indicated a point just beyond Earth's moon. Standard protocol calls for immediate deployment of electromagnetic disruptors to disable your communications and defense systems. Dr. Rivera looked up from her workstation, her eyes bright with an idea. But what if we turn that against them? Your ship's core resonates at a quantum frequency we've never seen before. If we could amplify that signature, we could create a feedback loop, Kira finished, catching on quickly. It would interfere with their targeting systems. Marcus entered, carrying fresh coffee for the team. Good, but we need more. They'll adapt quickly. Deputy Chen, how are those modifications to the planetary defense satellites coming? Better than expected, Chen replied, his fingers flying over his keyboard. Using Commander Thera's data on their shield frequencies, we can recalibrate Earth's entire satellite network into one massive disruption grid. Won't stop them, but it'll give them one hell of a headache. Thera felt a swell of pride, not for her own people, but for these humans who faced impossible odds with innovation and determination. Yet doubt gnawed at her. Even with these countermeasures, the fleet's technological advantage. Technology isn't everything, Marcus interrupted, placing a hand on her shoulder. You've seen what we can do with duct tape and determination. Now imagine what humanity can do when the whole world works together. As if to prove his point, screens around the room lit up with incoming communications. Marcus's network had grown far beyond their small group. Military commanders, scientists, and leaders from around the world were responding to their warning. Some were skeptical, but enough believed, or at least considered the threat serious enough to prepare. Chinese missile defense systems are being repositioned, reported one analyst. Russian Space Command is offering full cooperation, called another. European Union is mobilizing their electromagnetic pulse research. The reports continued, each one representing another piece of humanity's fragmented but formidable defense coming together. Thera watched in amazement as ancient rivalries were set aside in the face of a common threat. Commander, Ryan approached, her expression troubled. A private word? They stepped outside, where the first hints of sunrise painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. This is suicide, Ryan said bluntly. Even if their countermeasures work, even if we help them, the fleet will still overwhelm Earth's defenses. We should focus on saving ourselves. Thera studied her second-in-command, seeing the fear beneath her warriors' discipline. What do you see when you look at them, Ryan? Really look? Primitives with clever tricks, Ryan started, then hesitated. No, that's not true anymore, is it? I see possibility. They think differently than us. They don't follow protocols or hierarchies. They just create. Exactly, Thera smiled. And that's why we have to stand with them. Because Nova Primaris needs what Earth has, not their resources, but their spirit. Their ability to innovate, to cooperate despite their differences. A commotion from inside interrupted them. They rushed back to find all eyes on the main display, where multiple contacts were appearing near Jupiter. They're early, Thera breathed. The invasion fleet had arrived ahead of schedule, already deploying into attack formation. Marcus was instantly in command mode. Chen, activate the satellite grid now. Dr. Rivera, start broadcasting that quantum interference pattern. Everyone else, to your stations. As chaos erupted around them, Marcus turned to Thera. I need to know, are you with us? Really with us? Because what we're about to try. Thera met his gaze, seeing the strength, the determination, the sheer human stubbornness that had drawn her to him. In that moment, her decision crystallized. Kira, she called. Initiate core overload sequence. Everyone froze. Kira's eyes widened. Commander, that would destroy the Shadowhawk. Yes, Thera smiled grimly. But if we modulate the explosion through Dr. Rivera's quantum interference pattern and channel it through the satellite grid, we could create a planet-wide disruption field, Marcus finished, understanding dawning. Strong enough to knock out their entire fleet's systems. It would also destroy any chance of us returning home, Ryan pointed out. Thera looked around the room, at the humans and Novarians working together, at the bonds formed in crisis. Perhaps, she said softly, we're already home. As the invasion fleet approached and the world held its breath, humanity prepared to demonstrate why underestimating Earth was the greatest mistake the Novarian Empire would ever make. The next few hours would change both worlds forever, if they survived them. Unity's dawn. The invasion fleet filled Earth's skies, their massive ships casting shadows over cities worldwide. In the farmhouse command center, Thera watched as humanity's response unfolded with a coordination that would have seemed impossible days ago. "Fleets in position," Chen reported, his voice steady despite the stakes. "They're deploying electromagnetic disruptors as predicted." Marcus nodded grimly. "Dr. Rivera?" "Quantum interference pattern ready. Broadcasting through all modified satellites now." The first shots were fired, not by the invasion fleet, but by Earth. Modified satellites unleashed carefully calibrated energy pulses, creating a web of interference that momentarily confused the Novarian targeting systems. The fleet's first wave of attacks went wide, missing their marks. "They're adapting," Thera warned, reading the tactical displays. "Starting to compensate for the interference." "Then it's time," Marcus said, meeting her eyes. "Are you sure about this?" Thera squared her shoulders. "Kira, begin core overload sequence. Rhine, transmit my authorization codes to the fleet." Her crew moved with precision, even as warnings blared throughout the Shadowhawk systems. The ship's core began to pulse with increasing intensity, its quantum signature amplified by Dr. Rivera's modifications. "Message from the fleet," Rhine announced. "High Admiral Sethra demands we stand down and explain our actions." Thera took the communicator. "This is Commander Thera. I speak now not just for my crew, but for Earth. We have seen humanity's true strength, not in their technology, but in their spirit. They are not primitive, they are innovative. They are not weak, they are adaptable. And they are not alone." She nodded to Marcus, who pressed a button. Across the globe, humanity's combined technological might activated at once. The satellite grid lit up like a web of stars, channeling the Shadowhawk's building core energy. Chinese missile batteries launched specialized electromagnetic pulses. Russian orbital platforms released clouds of quantum-sensitive particles. European research stations broadcast precisely calculated interference waves. The invasion fleet's superior technology began to falter, their carefully coordinated attack dissolving into confusion. "Core reaching critical levels," Kira warned. 2 minutes to overload. Thera opened a channel to all Earth's defenders. "Stand ready. When the core detonates, focus everything you have through the disruption grid. Every satellite, every transmitter, every device you've modified. Everything." The farmhouse shook as the Shadowhawk's core pulsed ever stronger. Displays flickered, equipment sparked, but no one wavered from their posts. "1 minute," Kira called. Marcus took Thera's hand. "Together?" She squeezed it firmly. "Together." 30 seconds. Around the world, humanity held its breath. In orbit, the invasion fleet's commanders finally realized the trap they'd flown into, but it was too late. "Now!" Thera commanded. The Shadowhawk's core exploded in a burst of quantum energy unlike anything Earth had ever seen. But instead of destruction, the blast was captured, channeled, amplified through humanity's improvised global network. A wave of energy rippled outward, enveloping the planet in a sphere of shimmering light. When it reached the invasion fleet, their mighty ship simply stopped. Engines died, weapons went dark, shields collapsed. Earth's modified defenses had turned their own advanced technology against them. Multiple ships reporting complete systems failure, Rhine announced, unable to keep the awe from her voice. "The entire fleet is dead in space." A new voice crackled over the command center speakers, High Admiral Sethra herself. "Commander Thera, what have you done?" "Shown you the truth," Thera replied. "Earth is not a prize to be taken. Its people are not conquests to be made. They are our equals, perhaps even our superiors in ways that matter more than technology. You would betray your own people? No, Thera said firmly. I would save them. From their arrogance, from their stagnation. Earth has shown us a better way, strength through diversity, progress through cooperation, power through unity freely given rather than forced. Hours later, as Earth's governments negotiated with the humbled Novarian fleet, Thera stood with Marcus watching the sunrise. The sky was clear now, though she knew disabled alien ships still orbited above. What happens now? She asked. Marcus smiled. Now? Now we show your people what humanity's really capable of. Not as conquerors or conquered, but as partners. There's a whole universe out there, imagine what we could accomplish together. Thera looked at the humans and Novarians working side by side in the farmhouse, at the bonds forged in crisis that had grown into something more. My people will resist change, she warned. Of course they will, Marcus laughed. Change is hard. But they'll learn what you did, that different doesn't mean weak, that chaos can breed creation, that true strength comes in many forms. She leaned against him, feeling the warmth of Earth's sun on her face. And you'll teach them? No, he said softly. We'll teach them. Together. Around them, the world was already changing. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged stronger, more united. And somewhere in the stars, Nova Primaris waited, about to learn that the people they had dismissed as primitive had something far more valuable than advanced technology. They had the power to change, to grow, to become more than they had ever imagined possible. The dawn of a new era had begun.